Right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are recording on a Tuesday afternoon. We're going to talk about every NBA awards market today as we head into the second half of the season, or at least the post-All-Star break segment of the season. We're going to go through every one of these. Let's start off with MVP, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is minus 500. Nikola Jokic, he's plus 300. He firmed a lot after the Bontemps straw poll, which I don't understand at all, given that he lost 70-30 in the straw poll. But what did you think of that market movement, Drew? And do you think there's any value on Jokic at plus 300?
Wow, I don't. First of all, happy awards day. Happy awards day to the listeners. I think this is going to be one of the more anticipated and most enjoyed Bet the Edges we do all late winter here. The fair price for me right now, SGA is minus 700 and Jokic is plus 700. So plus 300 looks absolutely insane to me. I don't think anyone else has more than a fraction of a percent's chance of getting in. This is a two-man race, and for me at least, there is somewhere in the ballpark of a 12% chance that Jokic could steal this. And that is kind of assuming in small part that there could be an injury, there could be some time missed, there could be just some general cooling off of the candidacy around SGA. But the margin that I have between OKC in terms of projected wins in Denver right now is almost 16 wins, which is incredible. Jokic stealing this, considering that the Thunder, I'm right now pricing them in the 68 win range. Other public models out there have them enlisted at 65, 66 win range. And I'm pricing Denver in the 52 win range. So this is even with the most bullish Denver price and the least bullish OKC price, this is still a 13.5 win gap. That's too much for Jokic to overcome.
I agree. I think that the fact that Jokic only got 30% of the straw poll votes, I think, is instructive. Now, the 100 voters that Bontemps polls are not 100% one-to-one match with the actual voters. And based on some of the people who have said that they participated in that, I think that polling might even skew more analytical, which would make sense. It's probably just, harder to get hold of potentially people who are former players and stuff and don't want to participate in a poll. And those people skew more towards winning and record and those type of things, which favor SGA. I think that there are worlds certainly where Jokic can win, but I think that ultimately him getting his fourth just naturally creates a higher bar to clear. And some people have created or are trying to push the idea that, this is like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen 2.0, and that, Jokic, like Lamar, had a clearly better case, which I didn't really agree with Lamar Allen in the first place. But with Jokic SGA, and Jokic is putting up, insane stats across the board as is his nature. But the Thunder are a plus 18 with SGA on the court, and they're neutral with him off the court. So they're basically one of the greatest teams of all time when he's on the court. And then when he's off, they're a 500 team. They're a plus 18 with him on the court, despite him missing his best teammate for 80% of the season in Chet Holmgren. By EPM, the actual season-to-date EPM, Shai is ahead of Jokic. Shai is, on pace to win the scoring title. He's averaging 32.5 points per game while playing only 34 minutes a game because they blow everyone out so quickly. And I think that ultimately, you say you've got a 16-win gap projected. The market has it 13, 14. Regardless, it is a huge fave that it's going to be a material gap. And I think that ultimately SGA's case on its merit is strong enough that people are going to want to reward him for this Thunder season over giving Jokic his fourth MVP. And again, that specific dynamic of not wanting to give Jokic a fourth, that might be misinformed and unfair, but on the actual merits of the case, I think that SGA is totally deserving. I think it's pretty close on merit, but we're predicting who is going to win, not who should win. And everything points to SGA.
Yep. I almost felt silly saying out loud that I give Jokic a 12% chance.
No, I think that's reasonable. I think there are I think even when you're super bullish on the favorite or on any candidate, you need to craft like what are the worlds where it goes south for SGA outside of getting hurt, which is the obvious one.
Yeah.
But now he's so deep into the season, it's extremely unlikely, sub 10% clearly that he's going to not qualify for the award given he has so many games banked. So how does it go south for him? The Thunder sputter a little bit, and instead of being like a 65 plus win team, they're more like a 62 win team, and they lose a little bit of momentum. The Nuggets surge home into the 2 seed. Jokic goes through one of those stretches where he's averaging like 31, 12, and 11 for a month, and it just feels overwhelmingly at the end of the season that it's just so clear that Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, and people can't stomach giving the award to someone who they think has been a tier below Jokic as a player. Now, I think that's within the realm of reason. I think that's a bigger than 10% chance of happening. Okay. But I don't think it's, the market is plus 300, so 25% chance. I don't think it's a 25% chance. I would put fair, more SGA in the low 80s and Jokic in the high teens, that type of range. So no appetite for me to bet Jokic.
Well, let's revisit this on Monday, March 10th, because to me, the path for Jokic is they have an 8-game winning streak going now. They carry this winning streak into the March 2nd at Celtics, which is the end of their road trip. If they win that game and then go to Oklahoma City Thunder and beat the Thunder head-to-head twice, then the world you're kind of constructing manifests. And even then, I still think you could have a big enough gap when the dust settles that might be a nice re-entry point for more SGA.
Yeah, potentially. And I think even best price in the market on SGA is the minus 400 range, which I think is an okay parlay leg. But like I said, I think he is in the low 80s in terms of his percentage chance to win. So not a ton of value, but I would rather be backing that than Jokic plus 300. Let's go to most improved player, where at MGM, Cade Cunningham is minus 125, and the favorite, Norman Powell, is plus 110. Tyler Hero is 13-1, and then you get into some deeper long shots. I put out a Russian novel of a tweet about why I think Norman Powell is value. And I think the main thing for anyone who didn't read the tweet or doesn't want to read the tweet, which fair enough, I would say the main thing is that I think the market is just, it is almost as though it is pricing off of first place votes. And the market isn't, I don't think, even sophisticated enough to go to those levels of analysis really. But I think the market is pricing off of what it could look like in terms of first place votes and not acknowledging enough that Powell is just, by any construction, a huge favorite to beat Cade down ballot, because Powell is going to be seen as a candidate by almost everyone. And we have ample sample between how Ja Morant polled, how SGA polled, how Tyrese Maxey polled, that there is in the voter base an aversion to, guys who were expected to be good. And Cade Cunningham was the number 1 pick, and he's on a max contract. So there is much more linearity with him and his improvement than Powell's. And again, I'm not making a value judgment on who I think deserves to win. I think I would lean Powell, but I think that Cade would be a totally deserving winner. But again, predicting who the voters will vote for, who will leave Cade off ballot entirely, I think that makes it a pretty uphill battle for Cade to overcome the between 20 and 50% of voters, I think, who aren't going to treat him as a candidate because 50% of voters didn't treat Ja Morant as a candidate. 21% of voters didn't treat Tyrese Maxey as a candidate in an incredibly weak field. So what is your read on this one?
I have never understood why there is so much market support for Cade here. Somebody obviously keeps going to the well and supporting him. I don't see it. I think Powell is a very deserving front runner in this market. And honestly, like that other guys that are kind of in the discussion, and we've mentioned him a million times in this context, and he has caught zero steam. Evan Mobley, like these are guys that have taken more meaningful steps forward and have been, kind of more, I feel like, unexpected leaps forward. The fact that Norman Powell is doing what he's doing this year is truly amazing. I cannot believe he is currently top 37, top 36 in EPM. Norman Powell. That's that's shocking. His defensive improvements are being, largely ignored. He was a huge minus defensively, and now he's basically defense neutral player. It gives Ty Lue more flexibility with what the Clippers do in terms of rotation, and really just has stepped into the void that was created with Paul George leaving and Kawhi Leonard being unavailable for most of the season. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Powell's the right look, and I can't wait to read your Russian novel.
Yeah, indeed. In terms of how it could go south for Powell, I think outside of health, he can only afford to miss 8 more games. So again, he's got to play 20 out of 28 games. So he's a huge favorite to do that, but it's not 100%. Outside of like the Clippers spiraling, like the Clippers have this 31-23 start bank. Their win total for the season was 35.5. Like it has to be a pretty almighty spiral for them to have bad vibes when the season concludes. In terms of like Kawhi, the knock on Powell was the idea that like Kawhi coming back was really going to cut into his shots, and his counting stats would go down. Well, it hasn't really happened because one, like Powell, Harden, and Kawhi are the only 3 guys who can really do anything on offense. And then the Clippers have 6 more back-to-backs, and Kawhi is going to sit all of them, and that's 6 games for Powell.
Mm-hmm.
The last back-to-back, Powell scored 41 when Kawhi sat. So I think Powell is going to be like a 22-point per game guy. He's set at 22.5 in the market when Kawhi plays, and then when Kawhi sits, that goes up to 24.5. And I think that statistically he's going to be fine. I think there is some outlier risk that all of these other soul of the award candidates like Christian Brown and Dyson Daniels. I don't really think Dyson Daniels is going to steal votes from Powell, but like if Trey Murphy qualifies, he can only afford to miss 1 more game, but Trey Murphy could steal 6 to 8 first place votes from Powell. I don't think he can actually win, given that he's on a 13-42 Pelicans team, and the team is worse when he's on the court. They're a -10 when Trey Murphy is on the court. So I think that, if like those guys band together to steal 15, 20 votes from Powell somehow, and then Hero and Mobley don't steal votes from Cade, then Cade could win in a squeaker. Again, these are like outlier things that I just don't really think are going to surface. I think that if Powell stays healthy and Cade doesn't, average 31 a game the rest of the way, I think that Powell is going to win. I said in my Russian novel, my War and Peace, that I thought Powell's -300 fair. And I stick by that. So,
wow.
I think the market is just wrong. There's a lot of reasons why the market would be wrong, which again, I outlined in War and Peace, most improved player edition. Tolstoy didn't see that coming.
By the way, Cade Cunningham is approaching his career high for minutes played already. He is a bigger injury red flag in my mind.
Yeah, certainly. And also, like, they added Schroeder at the deadline. Like, Jaden Ivey might come back as well. Like, I don't think, like, those guys, they take touches away from Cade, where it's harder for Cade. Like, Cade has gone from 22.7 to 25.4 points per game, and he's the number 1 overall pick. Like, I just don't think that small of an increase is going to resonate enough with voters against this Powell case. Now, I think that Cade is going to increase his scoring average the rest of the way. I would put his median at more averaging like 26 on the dot, but even 22.7 to 26.0, normally guys are increasing their scoring averages like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points per game to win this award, which, Powell's increased his scoring average by over 10 points. And yes, he averaged 19 in half a season, like 4 years ago or something. But, going from 19 as a kind of gunner who was coming off the bench for the Clippers in the back half of that, I think, to, being 24 points per game and the leading scorer on a 6 seed, that's a pretty massive improvement, even if you're going off that baseline anyway. Okay, before we jump into Defensive Player of the Year, Saturday is your destination for the Premier League on NBC and Peacock. Don't miss Aston Villa face Cole Palmer and Chelsea as both clubs fight to stay atop the table. Kickoff is set for 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Okay, Defensive Player of the Year. Victor Wembanyama is -2,500. Jaren Jackson is 30-1. Evan Mobley is 30-1. Lou Dort is 40-1. This is a unique market, given that the Spurs are comfortably under 500 and they currently have the number 20 defense. and yet Victor Wembanyama is Victor Wembanyama. Do you think that everyone has just made up their minds that they're going to vote for Wemby, team defense be damned, or do you think there is some light for others?
I think if they continue to play, if the Spurs do not go into save him for next year mode, which would certainly affect his candidacy. I have a running counter of games missed for Wembanyama that just because that is sort of the way this turns into a rort. Then yes, there is a way. But as long as Wembanyama makes the cut line, then he's going to win, which is weird and sad and kind of incongruous from the way this is usually contested. The Spurs having a defensive rating right now that is squarely mid-table, 18th out of 30 in the NBA. A hair better than the Nets. Good job, Spurs. Yet it is kind of undeniable. When you watch him, the gravity and the impact that he has, on not just the way that opposing offenses are kind of drawing up plays, but the way that everybody makes decisions about whether to go for offensive rebound. Basically he is the son of a defensive kind of decision making offensive matchup. And it's pretty unique. And so the eye test kind of forces you, I think, to throw out some of the kind of deeper look at the advanced stats, in particular, kind of divorcing what he does from a Spurs team that, particularly when he's off the court, is quite poor defensively. So, yeah, I mean, it's an uninspiring category. I think if they reopened, like, who gets defensive all NBA, there's a lot of really good candidates, which is kind of, it's kind of maybe a fun discussion then too. Like if they do shut him down, if he misses enough games not to qualify, like who would be the guy?
With Wemby, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's
like who's your one click. If there's like a whiff of or even a rumor that Wemby's going to be shut down May 15th, they're calling it a season. Like, who's your first click?
March 15th. I think Mobley is the most likely. Mobley is the most likely guy to win narrowly over Jaren Jackson in a Wemby out type of world. I think that Mobley, between being on a team that's going to be, in the mid 60s for wins, they're the 8th defense right now. Memphis is the 7th ranked defense. The Cavs have a much easier schedule than Memphis going forward. Mobley has an insane on-off. His defensive EPM and advanced stats have crept up as well. I think the issue with actually beating Wembanyama is not so much that Wemby is infallible himself as a candidate, despite all the reasons that you laid out that I agree with. It's just that Jaren Jackson and Evan Mobley, they just don't have the juice as candidates to take down the unicorn. If Evan Mobley was on the number 2 defense in the NBA, I think this would be a different story, but he's on the number 8 defense, and the Cavs defense isn't really a story of the season or anything. I will go to my grave thinking that if he stayed healthy, that Chet Holmgren would have walked this award in, even with Wemby's season, because he would be the anchor of one of the best defense in NBA history relative to era. His advanced stats would stack up to Wemby, and I think that voters it's just too hard voting for the guy on the number 20 defense over the guy on the number 1 defense when the advanced stuff is close. And so I think Chet would have won, but obviously he's disqualified, and I just don't you have to go so deep into the weeds to find ways for Jaren Jackson or Evan Mobley to actually beat Wemby. So I don't think it's completely done. I don't think Wemby is 99% with health, but I think he might be 96% with health, to be honest, at this point. And I would say that he is probably more likely to lose by getting hurt, ASAP, than he is to actually lose qualified to another candidate. Mobley is the guy who I think he's the one who could summon the juice because of some of the underlying stuff. But I think that Wemby ultimately does walk this one in, and you can debate the merits of that. But he's got the best defensive EPM. They're the number 6 defense in the league when he's on the court. Yes, they have the number 20 defense overall, number 19. I'm looking at NBA.com right now. And also the defense could get worse as the season goes on, given that, they're playing smaller. Sohan isn't starting anymore, who's probably the second best defensive player on the team. There are ways that it could get a little bit sticky, but ultimately everyone thinks that he's the best player in this field. And I think that will ultimately see him through. Let's go to sixth man of the year, which is a bit more compelling of a race. Payton Pritchard is minus 160, looking to go effectively wire to wire. DeAndre Hunter coming off the bench again, it looks like, is plus 250. Malik Beasley is 5-1. Naz Reid is 10-1. Amen Thompson is 30-1. Do you have a horse to take down Payton Pritchard?
Yeah, my my novel in progress is around Super Sub Bees, who is coming for the sixth man of the year award. I am diligently keeping track of Payton Pritchard's shooting and his scoring and watching him desperately try to hustle to make up for the fact that his shots are not falling right now so that he can stay in contention for this award. I don't even really hold what he is doing sort of as like a his net rating and all those things. Like, yeah, that's fine, like this, but this does not even really hold up past the smell test to a guy that is gonna wire to wire the sixth man of the year. Like, there are a lot of other years where his case, he would be third or fourth choice. And I think this year, particularly with the way that Beasley is now settled into this extremely consistent scoring role off the bench for the Pistons, is going to help continue to see his star rise in this market. Hunter is a complicated case because I have a sense that they're going to start him a lot down the stretch as they try to get some of their guys some gas. I mean, I try to get some of their guys some rest in prep for a playoff run. But and I think that's kind of maybe the only knock on him, because otherwise his statistical profile as a sixth man looks pretty dang good. But Pritchard has been leaking oil in terms of just total sixth man compiled volume stats for about a month and a half, and the market has not budged from having him as this compelling favorite, and I think that's not correct.
Yeah, Pritchard's an interesting case because this is now 2 months of him. His statistical profile and why it looks pretty good overall at the moment is largely off of the first 8 weeks or so of the season, and then since looking December 15th, since then he's averaging 11.5 points per game over the past 2 months. That's 29 games. And that's while playing like 28 minutes a game and like shooting fine, like 45% from the field, 39% from three. He doesn't, get to the line at all. And so if that continues, if he's like 11.5 points per game the rest of the way and starts to drip into like, 13.1, 12.9, that kind of range, then I think he becomes extremely vulnerable. It looked like he'd kind of put a stamp on the award when he had those, I think, 20 and 25 point games back to back, but then he immediately undid that by scoring, I think, 5 and 10 points the next 2 games. So with Pritchard, I think he is clearly the most likely winner. I don't think there's anything particularly obscene about his market price. But in terms of how the rest of the market is priced, I just don't think DeAndre Hunter is going to win the award. And this is just my sense, is that I think that like playing, the first 2/3 of the season on like a uninspiring Hawks team and then coming off the bench for the Cavs for like 23 games or whatever, I just think that's not going to feel like the sixth man of the year for people unless he like really surges as a Cav and hits an outlier outcome that is much longer than plus 250. I think that Beasley is the second most likely player to win after Pritchard. And I'm interested for your take on this. I think the third most likely player to win is Amen Thompson, because I think that it is favorite that he will continue to start. But I think it's like, and this is just calculated guesswork, me reading through the lines of what Udoka has said publicly, and then looking at how the team has slumped, which has created, I think, less of an imperative to continue to start Thompson. I think there's like a 30% chance that Thompson is going to go back to the bench. And then if he does, I think he's immediately an extremely compelling candidate. But how do you think, if that does happen, if that 30% that I've manufactured from air, if that manifests, what do you think his chances are of beating Pritchard and Beasley if he ends the season with he'll still make some spot starts, so call it 47 games off the bench and 31 starts, but everyone's going to think he's the best guy who qualifies. How do you think that resonates?
If we toss Hunter, I agree. Thompson is your third most likely winner. And I would say that this market should be something like 40 Pritchard, 30 for Beasley, and 20 for Thompson, and 10 for Surprise.
Yeah, I think if Thompson is off the bench, I think that 20%, makes a decent amount of sense, which is, 30% to qualify, so he's 15-1 fair, that type of range. I think that's pretty reasonable, and he's, 30-1 and above in the market. So that would be the bet that most interests me at the moment. If there's still some straggling, Beasley in the 6-1, 7-1 range, I think that is slightly good. I think his fair is more like plus 550, how I've got it. And I'm a bit more bullish on Pritchard. Ooh. I think the issue with Pritchard, if you want to take him down, is that he's played every game except for one, which I don't think really matters in terms of is Pritchard playing 81 games versus someone else playing 69. I don't think that really matters. What matters though is that he's banked these stats and he's played a lot of games. So there's less, variance for him to, if he does slump a little bit, well, he's already banked, 53 games or whatever he's played of 13.8 points per game, which combined with his elite, advanced stats and efficiency is pretty tough to overcome. So I would take Pritchard over the field, but yeah, I don't think this one is done by.
I'm playing defense on Beasley 30-1, just so people know where my perspective is, why it's a little slanted. But Pritchard only has an 80-point lead in total bench points scored this year, despite a 400-minute advantage to this point in the season. And at the rate that we have had from the start of the year till now, Beasley will catch Pritchard in total points scored off the bench on around March 25th.
Yep. I think the other thing, if he's just the same guy that he's been for 2 months, then he's in massive trouble. If he's going to average 11.5 points per game the rest of the way, which is about where the market sets him, then it's going to feel like a pretty blah case if he's been 11.5 points for 4 months. And that drags all his averages down naturally. Now, I suspect that he's just going to have a couple random explosions when they sit guys that is probably going to get him to the award. But we'll see. I think this is, somewhat open for, even though I don't think Pritchard's price is necessarily wrong. The market is saying that he's about the 60%, slightly above chance to win. So there's still life in this one yet. And I think that, the big turning point for the market where most equity will be distributed or sucked up is going to be just when the press conference comes with Ime Udoka and who he says is going to start when Jabari is back along with Fred VanVleet. Okay, watch the biggest names in sports talk, including Mike Florio, Dan Patrick, Dan Lebitard, and Matthew Berry, as they cover the biggest moments on and off the field each weekday on the NBC Sports Now channel. It is now available on Peacock and free on most streaming platforms. Learn more at NBCSports.com/now. Plus, a special offer from MGM each Wednesday throughout the NHL season. Pick the skater you think will light the lamp first in the game. If it's not your player, but he scores the second goal of the game, you get your stake back. How it works: 1, place the first goal scorer bet. 2, if your player scores the first goal of the game, you win. 3, if your player scores the second goal of the game, but not the first, you'll get your stake back in cash. Okay, let's wrap up with Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and then my favorite, Clutch Player of the Year. Coach of the Year, Kenny Atkinson is -700 with the Rockets sliding and somewhat taking Ime Udoka not entirely out of the mix, but kind of out of the mix adjacent. He's closer to not in the mix than in the mix. JB Bickerstaff is 16-1. Taylor Jenkins is not going to win. He's 25-1. And then your man Mark Daigneault is 30-1, who was starting to kind of simmer us interesting and then had that weird loss to the Wolves just before the break. Do you think there is anyone who can take Atkinson down?
It is Daigneault, and it's only Daigneault. I right now am projecting about a 6-game gap between the Cavs and the Thunder when the dust settles. It's a big number. Again, I'm 68 wins for the Thunder, 62 wins right now for the Cavs. The Cavs have a more difficult schedule down the stretch. The Thunder have a very favorable schedule down the stretch in terms of sequence, in terms of not facing teams on back-to-backs and really like there's no scheduled losses, whereas the Cavs have a lot of games where they could stub their toe. And if the Cavs are scuffling a little, if they only beat the Celtics by like 2-3 games for the 1 seed in the East, whereas there could be, we're talking about the potential for some pretty massive margins between OKC and the next best team in the West and OKC and the next best team in the NBA. There's going to be some discussion about Daigneault, I think. And on top of it, the fact that he's done it without Chet for most of the season, the fact that, he has figured out ways to get such incredible play out of this bench unit as a whole is impressive. And just in general, from his failure last year in the playoffs, looks to have learned a lot of valuable lessons about how to utilize his players in crunch time. So, I think he's worth a shot at 30-1. This is not a steal. This is not a get out. This is not a just a broken market by any stretch of the imagination. It's going to be tough to catch Kenny, but Mark can do it.
Yeah, I think that he has a pretty solid argument to be the second most likely guy to win. But I think Atkinson, if I was to make one bet in the market right now, I think it would be Atkinson minus 700.
I think it's done.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think it's done. I just think that he is, in the low 90s. He's just banked such a handsome lead in this market. Bickerstaff would be a lot more interesting to me, if not for the fact that as soon as he left the Cavs, they improved by like 12 wins or 13 wins, whatever they're going to improve by, which I think really dents him. And then Daigneault at least has like not a checkmate move, but a kind of checkmate-ish move where if they just go on an absolute tear and they start to push their win total into historic territory and they finish, 9 games clear of the Cavs, which is unlikely, but shorter than a 30-1 shot, I think, then it could get interesting. But for now, I think that Atkinson has this one pretty on lock. But I agree with you. If I was going to make a second bet in the market, it would be Daigneault. Let's jump to Rookie of the Year, which hasn't really clarified that much, but there has been some separation. Stephon Castle is plus 130. Khalil Ware is plus 280. Zachary Reese-Shea is 7-1. Jalen Wells plus 750. Zach Edey is 13-1. I think those are the only guys who can win. No interest at all in Alex Sarr or Isaiah Collier or Buzelis, even though he's starting and putting up some numbers. I think he's coming from way too far back. Do you agree with Stephon Castle kind of inching towards, getting closer to being 50% equity in this market?
Oh, man. I would have him a hair shorter, and I'm pretty close to just throwing up my hands and saying, fine, it's Castle. Let's just stop talking about this. But I will note that in some faraway places where they are taking relatively large stakes, there has been the Zach Edey army showed up. He was 14, 15-1, maybe 16-1 yesterday when I checked, and he is now plus 677. So somebody is probably staked close to 10K-ish on Mr. Edey to bring home something like, I will just say 80K. It wasn't me. I have a little bit of Zach Edey, but it wasn't me who recently went ham there.
Wasn't me either.
It wasn't you either?
Okay. No, not this. I've got a lot of Zach Edey, but not in the past week or so.
Did you know this happened?
Yeah, I did see that, which I guess gives me some small degree of confidence. I don't think Edey's going to win, but I do think that the market is wrong with how it's ordering this market at the moment.
Yeah, it makes me think I might be able to get off some Zach Edey at some point, which isn't a bad idea. It's I think the key kind of points here are Wells's case has completely fallen flat with what Castle has done recently. he was going to be the by default winner if no one else did anything. And Castle has done enough, I think, now, particularly if you just look at what he's compiled in terms of total stats, he's passed him. And he's getting featured pretty healthy in terms of his offensive role being expanded for the Spurs on, again, like terrible team, terrible unit. His defense is suffering in because of what they're asking him to do offensively, but his counting stats are there. So, and again, like, this is such a weak and this is such a weak sauce class. This could eventually just go to Castle because people have the highest confidence that he will still be a player in the league in 3 years. And you can't say that about any of the other guys. So Risa Shea's case kind of getting short recently, I think is fool's gold. It's, very reminiscent of what we saw when Sarr was just getting garbage stats and getting, and people were betting him. I think that's nonsense. This comes down to Castle or Edie, I think, at this point, and where is your outsider, but his inconsistency is starting to show.
Yeah, I think where the idea that Ware was this kind of joker card who was extremely high variance, which I completely agreed with when he first kind of entered the starting lineup and he had those huge games to begin. That idea is wearing thinner and thinner. Like, I don't even think he's that high variance anymore. He just doesn't get the usage, and Wiggins and Slow-Mo are both going to cut into his minutes. So I don't think he's 0% or anything, but I think that he is closer to 10% than the market, which is saying that he's, north of 25%, which I think is very generous. With Shai, like, what is, for people who are bullish on Shai, I'd encourage them to ask themselves the question, like, what does it actually look like where he wins? Like, what is the world where Shai wins? Is it that he's averaging like, even if he averages like 16 a game the rest of the way, like, I don't think that's going to beat even like Jalen Wells, let alone Stephon Castle. So Shai, could he go absolutely berserk with all these Hawks injuries and be like, north of 20 a game the rest of the way? In that world, he could probably win, but that's a lot longer than his 7-1 price. I think that Castle's price is about fair. I think I would have him tier 1 by himself at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, there's 2 reasons. One, he's just gotten better as the season has trended on. He has gotten better as an offensive player. His advanced stats have all trended in the right way. Just kind of eye test watching him, he looks more confident. The ball is also just going in more. And then secondly, he just gets an insane amount of usage for a rookie who's, not that good on offense. Like, he's got 24.1% usage, which is kind of insane, but it seems like they've given him the keys to be able to just, shoot the ball as often as he does. And I thought that him, being shifted to the bench when De'Aaron Fox came across, that might be, not good night, but certainly an equity dent. As it turns out, like, not really, because he's got this insane usage where even if he's only going to play, the thing with Castle and why he's not infallible is that some nights he just plays 20 minutes. And anyone who's just kind of playing 20 minutes some nights, they can be beaten with how much time there is still left in the season. But I suspect that, when he's hot and when he's playing well, he's going to be more like 28, 30 minutes. And then when he's not playing well, he's going to be like 20. And it's going to average out where he's 24, 25, 26 minutes a game or whatever. And if he's getting 24% usage, then it's likely going to be, there's a good chance that that's enough to see him across the line. But he's at 51% true shooting. Like, it just takes a slump for the numbers to get really ugly. And he shoots so much that slump can definitely come and can definitely torpedo his numbers where, if he's 42% from the field, 28.9% from 3 and 73% from the line. He has a -4 box plus minus. EPM is a bit kinder to him at -0.9. So, like, it's not great. It's just better than these other guys at the moment. And I think that, like I said, I think he is the most likely winner. But the way I would order things is that I would have both of the Memphis guys above Ware and Shai as more likely to take Castle down. Jalen Wells is very uninspiring, and I think the most likely thing is he's just going to peter out into nothing with Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson getting more minutes now that they are back in the fold. But, teams, those guys and Jar get hurt all the time, and there are worlds where Wells can just kind of piece together playing 28 minutes a game and ride some shooting luck to become a safer default candidate. Edie, I just don't understand why they don't feature him more. Like, I just think that he is warranted more usage and more playing time, and Jenkins just clearly doesn't trust him. And we're not pricing what he should be doing. We're pricing what he is doing, and Edey just can't. Edey can't win in this current role, but I think there is scope for that role to improve, and I'd rather bank on that than Kel'el Ware or Risa Shea. I think that Edey should be more in the plus 900 range, as opposed to, I think there's still like some 16-1 out there on Edey. So I would go to war with the Memphis guys, and I think that Castle's price is about neutral value, and so I'd just be fading Ware and Risa Shea at their current prices.
Okay. And honorable mention to Too Little Too Late from the Portland Trail Blazers and Donovan Clingan.
Yeah. There are worlds where he could have won if they'd started him from the start over Ayton, because I think he might actually
I agree.
He could actually be good.
He think could be a player, yeah.
Another thing that, like, as much as like people project out, stats and what it's going to look like at season end, like, big question you have to ask yourself in this market is, like, who's actually good? Like, who's actually good at basketball? I think Zach Edey's good. I think Jalen Wells is good. I think Castle is good, like, in terms of how he's played lately. The start of the season wasn't good at all. Risa Shea isn't good. Kel'el Ware is very up and down. And then, like, Alex Sarr is horrific. And Clingan, might be good. But alas, we will not learn how to live in the Donovan Clingan Rookie of the Year world, as it will not exist. Let's close out with Clutch Player of the Year, which is still probably the wonkiest awards market in a way. Nikola Jokic is minus 105. Trae Young is 4-1. Jalen Brunson is plus 650. Tyrese Maxey 15-1. Jason Tatum 16-1. Darius Garland 18-1. I know you have a strong opinion in this market, Drew.
Yeah, this is a false favorite. What in the world is Jokic doing at minus money here? This makes zero sense to me. I think here's you, if you don't already know, here's how you handicap the Clutch Awards. You go to NBA.com. I'm sorry, I gotta get that right. NBA.com /stats /players /clutch -traditional. And then you go to totals, and you sort by points. That's all there is to this market. And right now, your number one accumulator of points in this market is Trae Young. And Trae Young has scored 131 points in clutch in 28 games played. Jokic has played 22 games. They have relatively similar successful clutch records. That is to say, Trae Young is a winning player in these games that go into the clutch. 15 wins for the Hawks. If you look at what they're doing in the clutch between Trae Young and Jokic, it is not even close. Trae Young is the absolute center of the universe for the Hawks offensively. He is doing everything. He is shooting better from three. He is shooting many more threes. He's got 44 threes shot in the clutch compared to Jokic's 11. Jokic is only getting to the line 32 times in the clutch. Trae Young, 61. Jokic is shooting poorly from the free throw line. He is down at 78 compared to out of the clutch. He's at about 82. Like that, all of the kind of just volume stats as you compare Jokic and Young, like it is clearly Trae Young is the more impressive clutch player. And this happened relatively recently because, you know why, Jay? Because the Nuggets haven't been playing many games that go into the clutch, and they might not have many more for the rest of the season because they've fixed some of the underlying problems with this team where they are asking Jokic to go out there in the fourth quarter and be enough of a guy to get them barely across the line. Now they're playing well enough that they're getting across the line against these bad teams that it's just not mattering. And so he might be relatively done accumulating big time clutch moments. And actually, I don't even know what his clutch moments are. I can't even think of them. You know what I can think of? Like 5 Trae Young ones off the top of my head. So just in a neutral state, like who has sort of earned favorite status in this market, I think it is Trae Young. And if you really want to take a swing at Trae Young, you have to look at some of his efficiency stuff, his plus minus and really the net rating and things like that, which, by the way, is not as easy to get to. You have to really understand how to navigate the NBA advanced stats page pretty cleverly to get that sort of stuff. But if you do that, you know who it says clearly the most efficient and best clutch players in basketball? It says it's Jalen Brunson. not Nikola Jokic. Jokic is a mile behind him in terms of what he is doing. And both of these guys, like, if you're like, well, you can't knock Jokic for only taking 11 threes. I'm sure he's still, he's still doing a lot offensively, right? He's creating. Nah, he has 20 assists in the clutch. That compares to 29 for Trae Young. And I had this up and I've lost it again. Oh yeah, 17 for Brunson. So it's not really a matter of him, kind of being more of a focal point of the offense. And I think you could argue that Tatum should be ahead of Jokic. You could make a reasonable argument just from a counting stat standpoint that Edwards should be ahead of him, although Edwards' record in the clutch is not great. So yeah, I think this market is going to come down to Young versus Brunson when it's all said and done. I think Atlanta and New York are going to have more visibly close games down the stretch to continue to accumulate clutch moments and clutch stats. And I think the fact that we'll reflect on, can you believe Jokic was minus 105 at the midseason mark? We can have a good belly laugh about that in April. People are treating this award like this is going to be some sort of consolation prize for him for not getting MVP. And I just don't think that's how the voters see the clutch award at all.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about this market is kind of that the voters don't see this award at all. They don't care. And I don't think they're going to give it a great deal of thought because it's very much the last award that you do give thought, and it is largely just based off of this page. For the most part, I agree, with everything you said. The only thing is that I do think Jokic is a material chance to win. I just don't think that I agree with you. I don't think he should be minus money, or even really particularly close to that. I agree with you particularly on Brunson, where Brunson has like 47% usage in the clutch.
Insane
if
number.
I was going to price who is the favorite to score the most clutch points from this point forward of the candidates, I would have Brunson as the favorite just because of the insane usage. And I think it also helps him a ton that New York have a pretty difficult schedule the rest of the way. So yeah, the Knicks are awesome, but they're going to play a tough schedule. So it's more likely they get into clutch games. Brunson has, multiple game winners, including, I think that might be the last game they played against the Hawks. And then also he hit the game winner against the Nets. He's Jalen Brunson. He is very much a made man. The Knicks Twitter is campaigning for him for this award. He also leads. Yes. Yeah. They're on the bandwagon because it's really the only award they can win. Yeah. They're not going to win anything else. So yeah, this is it. You got to put all the eggs in the Brunson clutch basket if you want an award this year, Knicks, outside of like all NBA stuff for Brunson and Cat, or an NBA title, but that's harder to campaign for. He's leading all the candidates in clutch points per game as well. I think that if push comes to shove, do people want to vote for Jalen Brunson and give him an award, or do they want to vote for Trae Young on a 37-45 Hawks team when he's shooting 39% from the floor in the clutch? Like, I think that any tiebreak will go to Brunson if it's close. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that Brunson at plus 650 is much too big. I think there might even be some bigger prices out there on him. The market is all over the place on this one. Some places Brunson is 2-1, which I think is actually closer to fair than the bigger prices about Trae. I think that his price has probably settled in around fair, though I do think that he and Jokic should be priced much closer together. The one long shot I would give out in this market is DeMar DeRozan, who is in the 30-1, 40-1 range. Look, he's got no case whatsoever right now. It'd be 0% to win a vote held today, but there's still a third of the season left. And he has had like insane usage after Fox left Sacramento in the clutch. I believe it's north of 40% when I last checked. He is, he's on 96 clutch points. So he's like 3 points behind Jokic, 5 behind Brunson, admittedly a bigger gap to Trae. It's a 35-point gap, but DeRozan, with the usage that he's getting, the Kings are born to play in clutch games. They're kind of the definition of a team that should ramp up and, have a lot of opportunities for DeRozan to improve his clutch stats. He's plus 36 in terms of his plus minus. The record is 13-14, and he's shooting 43% from the floor. Those are the big flaws at the moment, but there's enough time to correct them. They're not so far gone like they are for, say, like Anthony Edwards is 14-18 in the clutch, and minus 39 and shooting 41.8% from the field. So I think he's really up against it. But yeah, DeRozan would be my flyer. I think DeRozan is the fourth most likely guy to win after Trae, Brunson, and Jokic.
Okay. That's interesting. I've always long watched his game and been like, he saves it for the clutch.
Yeah,
so,
that's the other thing too. Is like,
yeah.
in a way, like everyone will want to vote for DeRozan if he's got the case, because I think he's come second twice. He was close-ish to beating Curry. He finished second. It was a little bit of margin by the end, but he's got the clutch rep. This is kind of an award that I'd say that it's weird because the player you'd probably most associate with this award is DeMar DeRozan, even though he's never won it. It's just kind of perfect for his niche, because DeRozan doesn't belong winning, MVPs and that type of thing, but he does belong winning Clutch Player of the Year. He's got some work to do, but 40-1, I think he's more than a 2.5% chance to win the award, just with the upside with Fox gone. Okay. That's it for us today. 50 minutes of awards content. Hopefully you found something in there to follow. We are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.